Happy Generational Wealth Wednesday. She got Jimmy from my advisor, JimmyHoward.com. Thank you guys for tuning in. Today, I'm going to show some love to the young rock star, Lil Baby, who recently celebrated going triple platinum. And for those who don't know, that means that he sold 3 million copies of his album, My Turn, within a span of 1 year. So he just came across his 1 year anniversary. And I know a lot of times with this younger generation, we can find so many faults, but I want to be the one to be a champion for this next generation. So for those who are familiar with Lil Baby and his imprint, you may notice this, 4PF. And for those who are in the know, you understand that 4PF stands for Four Pockets Full. Okay? So today, I want to give it an additional meaning as a way to illustrate an important topic. And that topic today is the four planning principles of finance. The four planning principles of finance. And as always, you can count on me to use an acronym. So the acronym we're using today is FLEE. And FLEE stands for family financial planning, legacy planning, educational planning or college planning, and entity planning. So let's break it down. Family financial planning. Now, family financial planning could consist of financial topics that couples may want to have amongst each other. So it may consist of things such as coming up with a family budget, or if you guys are going to decide to merge your assets together, are we going to have a joint banking account, or are we going to keep everything separate? Is my money, or is it my money is my money, your money is my money too type of thing? So those are some of the topics that couples may want to have in terms of the family financial aspect. And it also involves your kids, so teaching them good money management behavior as well. So for kids, you may do things such as, an allowance, or even if they're old enough, consider opening them a bank account as well so they can get a hang of managing money. Back in the day, you teach a child how to manage balance a checkbook, but checks aren't used as commonly as they used to back in the day. So legacy planning. Legacy planning, it's important to note that this is not just financial, but legacy planning also consists of not just the things that you leave to a person, but the things that you leave within a person. So your knowledge, your insights, your values, things of that nature. So it's not just financial. And it's also, you have to consider memorialization. So for some people, in addition to the things that they leave to their kids or what have you, they also want to, make contributions to their alma mater, or a research hospital, and they want to allocate money to discovering a cure for a disease that may hit home for them. They may have a nonprofit that they really support the mission of. So, in considering legacy planning, again, it's not just financial. It's also, you consider memorialization as well. And also, I want to add, it makes me think of a video that I posted a while back. You guys can scroll through and see. I remember a conversation between that Oprah was having, and she was talking about a conversation that she had with Maya Angelou before she passed. And Maya Angelou told her that your legacy consists of every life you've touched. So I know many of you may feel like, well, I'm a person not of many means. How can I leave a legacy? Well, that legacy is on every life you touch, every encouraging word that you've spoken into someone's ear, every time you've come through for somebody, and moments of hardship. Those things, everybody's story of you and legacy of you is going to be different. You've touched people at different points and made impact on people in different ways. So again, it's not just about means, because if you focus on thinking that your legacy is about how much you have, I want you to think about everybody on their dying deathbed. One of the most common statements when someone is on their deathbed, it's never about money. They wish they would have spent more time with family or pursued a dream that they really had deep down inside. It's never about, oh man, I wish I would have made more money. So I don't want you guys to, wrap your identity up in the things that you have. Education. Educational planning, or also known as college planning, it consists for not just saving for college, putting away money for college. And there's so many things that you can, so many investment vehicles and financial vehicles that you can take part in to achieve that goal, but it's also saving on college. And for example, you have the debate between private universities and public universities, where common thought have you to believe that going to a public college would be cheaper because the tuition is usually lower than a private institution. Well, the difference, and that's why it's important to start planning early. A lot of private institutions have more funds allocated toward merit-based scholarships as well as need-based scholarships. So although a public school's tuition may be lower, a private school may have more financial resources available to a student. And even nowadays, a lot of private institutions are, setting aside additional aid for, kids coming out of, minorities, basically. And then I also want to know, I'm going to tell you a personal story. When I was attending Howard University, the girl that I was dating at the time, and you probably heard me share the story before, I'm not going to call her name, but the girl I was dating at Howard University, I just recall her not having any student loan debt. And the reason why she didn't have any student loan debt is because her parents began preparing her for college early on. They had her applying for scholarships and stuff while she was in high school. So she was one of the only, one of the few, if not only, people that I knew that attended, Howard University or college in general and didn't have any student loan debt. And one of the things that contributed to that, not only did her mom attend college, but her grandmother also attended college as well. And when I went, when I was up there, it was just baffling for me because my grandparents on both sides, they probably had elementary or middle school age, education, But again, just looking at her situation, it was her family's the fact that her family had taken advantage of, additional further their education. They knew what was expected and what was coming ahead. So they prepared her properly. So I just want to share that with you guys. So that's educational planning. And then lastly, we have entity planning. And an example of entity planning. So once you get all these things in place, you don't necessarily want to do everything in your name per se, because then you open yourself up to liability, like, for example, you have the Series LLC or restricted LLC. So a Series LLC is kind of like an umbrella that houses other entities, and each entity is responsible for its own liability and things of that nature. So, like, for example, it's often used in like real estate. So a lot of people who invest in real estate, they may have a management company, and each property that they manage is its own entity. So instead of having all these properties wrapped up under one, one company, and that, let's say for instance, something happens at one location, then now the other properties can also be included in some type of litigation. So a Series LLC is an example of that. But you also have, excuse me, you also have what's known as a restricted LLC. And I also want to note that these entities, some of these are not available in all states. And again, of course, if you are considering, taking advantage of things like this, please consult with your, business advisors or legal advisors, every chance you get. Restricted LLC. A restricted LLC is set up not for business purposes. It's really set up to transfer assets within the family. So again, when you're thinking about entity planning, you got to think about, things like Series LLC or Restricted LLC. And then one of the things that also fall under entity planning is succession. So that's simply just identifying who's going to replace you, replacement planning. Who's going to replace you in the event of death, demise, um, some type of health emergency. Who's gonna, who's gonna identify, who's gonna replace you. So those are the 4 planning principles of finance. And before I end today's video, I also want to throw a quick plug to the a documentary that I just watched. You can go head over the title. It was a documentary produced for Harry Belafonte. And I think that it was a perfect example of having an intergenerational discussion and just seeing how Harry Belafonte was able to use his fame and notoriety to bring attention to to the cause and to the work that was being done in the civil rights movement. And he was, mostly inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King after having a conversation with Dr. King, and he got involved with the movement. And it was something that he didn't have to do, but he chose to do it. And I think one of the most, without going into too much detail about the documentary, one of the testimonials that was given that I appreciated the most was from Maxwell. And Maxwell he talked about how it was a teacher, growing up that encouraged him, who noticed something different about him, saw that he had a creative nature to him, and told him that he reminded her of a young Harry Belafonte. And from that moment forward, he had someone to aspire to, someone to look up to. And, the rest is history. So Harry Belafonte, he also mentioned that it's every generation's responsibility for their revolution. Every generation is responsible for their own revolution. So I thought that was powerful. But go check it out. Those guys put a lot of work into that documentary. Shout out to everybody that was involved. But you could go check it out on Tidal. But that's pretty much all I have for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, peace.